Have you lost your right to have a gun? Maybe you actually didn't lose your right, but you went to buy a gun and were denied. We're talking about how to get your rights back and get your record straight on today's AK Show. This is Alex AK Kincaid. Welcome to the AK Show. So, how can you lose your gun rights? There are actually a lot more ways that people lose rights than just becoming a convicted felon. Many people who are not criminals lose their gun rights in America every day. And the main reason is a 1968 federal law known as the Gun Control Act. The Gun Control Act has a long list of reasons why people are prohibited from just picking up a firearm. And that list includes if you use marijuana, even medical marijuana if you live in a state where it's been legalized, if you commit a misdemeanor crime of domestic violence, of course if you've been convicted of a felony, if you've lost the ability to make your own decisions, and that taking away of your ability to contract and make your own daily decisions has been done by a board or a court, such as the VA, as an example. That comes up a lot in my practice. The VA has decided that a returning soldier needs help, needs recovery time, is undergoing medical procedures, and won't be able to manage their own affairs anymore. Suddenly, that soldier has lost their gun rights. And I have another video on how that happens and why and all the problems with it. Explore my YouTube channel and you can watch it. But my point is that not just the court, a judge, but also these boards are making decisions that take gun rights away from people. And another area where I see this law come into effect is for my senior clients. I may have war veterans who have a wonderful firearms collection that is a big part of their life. And if they suddenly can't balance their own checkbook, or they're being taken advantage of by other people, and a judge decides that they need to appoint a guardian or a conservator to manage the affairs for that senior, that court order takes away that person's gun rights. And there was a case a couple of years back where a man had lost his gun rights because he was committed to a mental institution for a short period of time after his wife left him. And what happened was his wife left, cleaned out the bank account, the man's daughter came home, and he was banging his head and just wouldn't come out of it. And so she did what she thought was the right thing for his health and welfare at the time. And he was actually in a mental institution for recovery from what happened to him in his personal life. That commitment took away that man's gun rights, and he had to fight for years to get them back. He had no other problems in life, no criminal convictions. He wasn't mentally ill. But just because he went through a hard time and needed some help, his gun rights were taken away. And these are the kinds of things that we deal with on a daily basis in my law practice. People lose gun rights, or they even get arrested for something, they're never convicted, and suddenly they go to buy a gun and find out that they're flagged by the FBI and their processing of their background check doesn't go through. You can also lose your gun rights because your state may have specific laws that allow someone to, let's pick on California again because it's just a source of all kinds of gun control laws to use as examples. But out west here, California and even Washington, people can go to court and say to the judge that your guns need to be taken away from you. The court will allow that to happen under certain circumstances, and then you have to fight to get your gun rights back. State laws can really differ in terms of when you lose your rights, how you restore your rights, and even what a firearm is. So for instance, under the federal law, the Gun Control Act, a black powder rifle, a muzzleloader, it's not a firearm. A felon could technically be in possession of a black powder rifle under the federal law and not be breaking the law. But many state laws consider that same muzzleloader to be a firearm, so you can be prosecuted for being a felon in possession of a firearm under your state law. That's how tricky this can get. My point with this is talk to a knowledgeable lawyer. Don't just read something online and think that you understand what you can and can't do. If you have an issue where you've been flagged, even if you think it's wrong, you shouldn't be in possession of firearms until we get the issue cleared up. So, your record may be wrong, and I can't tell you how many people need my help because they go to buy a gun and they're suddenly denied. People who have even bought guns for years since the supposed issue arose. And now suddenly we're seeing more reporting of these people to the FBI and the NICS background check system, and they're suddenly being denied their right to have a gun. So what's the first step in restoring rights? Number one, contact an attorney who understands the firearms laws. This may not necessarily be the same attorney who helped you with a criminal case if the problem is a criminal conviction. It's a completely different world to clean up a record than it is to deal with being prosecuted in state court or even federal court. So the first question is, do you actually have something on your record that is prohibitive? And if there is there a way to clear it up under your state's law? The state law that will apply is the state where the problem occurred. So if you were convicted in California of a crime that is prohibiting you from possessing a gun, we first have to look whether California has a way to get that crime off your record. States have different mechanisms for dealing with this. There may be a withheld judgment, then we simply dismiss your conviction. There may be an expungement process. Or there may be a pardon, and pardons can be granted. It might be by a governor, or it could be by a board, and they differ in how difficult they are to get depending on the process and depending on your state. So one of the things that we're running into is that some crimes are being suddenly reported to the FBI, as I mentioned, and sometimes that happens and the state that convicted a person of a crime has destroyed all the records. So we're going through this situation right now where states are getting rid and they're purging all of their paper files, and they're not even keeping a record. I've had clients who were convicted in the 60s of crimes, and there's no record of it. So I can't go to the state and get a copy of the paperwork to figure out what process we need to use, or even to say, hey, FBI, you're wrong in what you have on the record because this person was not convicted of a felony. They were only convicted of a misdemeanor. There's no paperwork to do it. So we have different ways of dealing with that, and it's going to depend on the state where the conviction occurred, and your starting point is going to be to talk to a lawyer who knows how to do this. The second thing that can happen is you can be convicted of a federal crime. Some federal crimes actually are not prohibitive of owning a gun. So if you were convicted of something that is a business-like crime, a transactional issue, maybe it was tax fraud or something of the like, and it's not a violent crime, it may be an environmental law that you broke. Those crimes are not prohibitive, and there's a process for dealing with those issues that are on your record. The problem that we're running into at the federal level has more to do with a process that has been completely stalled since the 1990s because there's no funding to process applications. There's an application process that exists. You may come across it if you're searching online, where you can submit a form and ask that your gun rights be restored. Those applications aren't going anywhere. So really, if you were convicted of a federal crime that is prohibitive, in other words, maybe it was violent, or it's a drug crime, or it's something that takes away your right to possess a gun, and you are now a different person, your only route to restoring your gun rights at the federal level is to get a presidential pardon. So right now, there's an end process that we do with a lot of our cases where we are actually asking the federal government to update records. And there's a system for doing that. There's paperwork that we fill out, we submit it to the right people, and your record is supposed to be updated so that the correct information is shown if you go to buy a gun and a background check is conducted. Unfortunately, that process is so backlogged that I'm being told by the federal government that they are just now processing applications that we've submitted from over a year and a half ago. And this is true across the country. It's not just my office or the state of Idaho. The federal government is that backed up that they are telling you, if you submit an application today, it's going to take a year and a half before the federal government will even look at your application. The federal government's record is wrong. Their entry is inappropriately preventing you from exercising your Second Amendment rights, but they're telling you you can just sit on your rights for 1.5 years while you wait for them to process your paperwork. Firearms attorneys are taking action. We're preparing to file a federal lawsuit here in Idaho on behalf of my clients. I know other lawyers have filed these similar lawsuits across the country. And what we're doing is we're saying, federal government, you don't get to sit on this for 1.5 years. These people have rights, and their records should be restored or corrected, and they shouldn't have to wait 1.5 years for you to do that. The thing to take away from this is if you've lost your gun rights, or maybe you haven't, but you need to clear up your record, call us immediately. We specialize in helping Americans exercise their Second Amendment rights, and we can likely help you in your situation. I'm Alex A.K. Kincaid. Thank you for watching The A.K. Show. This is Alex A.K. Kincaid, and thank you for watching The A.K. Show.